Hi everyone and welcome back to the most inconsistent gaming news talk show that has ever existed. Like, I totally know that for a fact. One player only, and this week, well, I'm talking about a bunch of the news that went on because there were a handful of stories, in particular 3 stories, that really stood out. It was quite a big news week, and because I'm a lazy asshole, I didn't make a single one video on any of these stories, so I thought, let's bring back this show and let's talk about all 3 of these pretty big stories in one go, shall we? Let's be time efficient, you know what I mean? This specific show represents everything that goes on in this channel, and that is I have no idea what I'm doing. Let's get into the first of our 3 stories today, and all of these news pieces this week, all of them were quite surprising in some way, but I think this one is probably the least surprising just because it only helped to specify stuff that we already knew. And I'm talking about the brand new Ghost of Tsushima trailer, information and release date that all came out a few days ago. The trailer revealed that the release date for the game will be June 26th of this year, which is honestly sooner than I had expected. We learned back in December at the Game Awards that Ghost of Tsushima will be coming out in summer 2020, and I always, and I think a lot of the community as well, expected that to mean in the August or even September area because Sony had released first-party games in that area recently, particularly Spider-Man, so this seemed to make a lot of sense that Ghost of Tsushima would release then, and it's been quite some time since Sony has released a huge AAA first-party game in that June area around E3. I don't believe, and I could be wrong, I don't believe they've done that since releasing The Last of Us on PS3 in 2013 in June. So there just hadn't been a precedent for them releasing a game in June for quite some time, so we didn't expect it, but nonetheless, Ghost of Tsushima coming out in June, only a little over a month past The Last of Us Part 2's release date, which is particularly interesting because we've seen over the last few years, very consistently, Sony has made an effort in their release pattern and schedule to ensure all of their first-party games from their studios have been releasing months apart to give them time to breathe, and that natural separation that comes with a big video game release makes a lot of sense. They seem to be dropping it this time around. God knows why. I think it's quite strange for them to be releasing a Naughty Dog game and a Sucker Punch game, which obviously both studios are 2 of their biggest under the PlayStation umbrella, so it's interesting to see that we're going to be getting a game from each studio around 4 or 5 weeks apart. If I were to guess, I would assume PlayStation 5 plans are affecting this in some way, whether or not they just want to create a long gap between PlayStation 5's launch and the last PS4 exclusive. Why they'd do that, I don't really know. Or maybe it affects how they're planning on internally doing their PS5 reveal event, which I've talked about ad nauseum. Maybe they're planning on doing that around that same time, who knows? Reason for it aside, who cares? June 26th, it's going to be a blast. I'm really stoked for the game. It's honestly one of my most anticipated games, and I think The Last of Us Part 2 is probably a game I'm a little bit more excited for just because that's a story that's obviously been on our minds for years, so it makes a lot of sense for me to be super excited for the continuation of that. But at the same time, honestly, Ghost of Tsushima, I think from a gameplay perspective, from what we've seen, from a graphical perspective, is just appealing to me more at this point because as much as I love The Last of Us, there's something about the dark nature of everything we've been seeing in Part 2 that kind of is putting me off a little bit, you know? I feel like it's going to be a terrifying thing to play. I'm kind of scared of it, to be perfectly honest. I'm a bit of a pussy, I know, but still. So Ghost of Tsushima coming a month later, being this cool Japanese samurai open world game, looks like a nice change of pace for me personally. I'm stoked for it, and the trailer we got for it with the release date was super cool. Obviously, the game's absolutely stunning. God, Sucker Punch, man, you make some beautiful games. The landscapes, the character models, everything, the freaking foliage and the grass and the flowers, honestly, unbelievable stuff. Can't wait to get my hands on it. And it's cool that we got another trailer so close from the last one, because when we got the last trailer in December of 2019, it had been around a year and a half before that since we'd heard anything about the game, and now we get another trailer only a few months after that, so it's cool that, I don't know, I feel like the hype's definitely building for this game where it had previously been stagnant for a long time. And outside of the game obviously looking beautiful, as we can all see. I mean, you'd have to be blind not to notice that. One thing that definitely piqued my interest, I would say, in the last trailer were aspects of the story. We didn't get a whole lot about it, but there seemed to be some potential there, in my opinion, in that last trailer, and this trailer only confirmed that because the story segments and all that stuff and that setup that we seem to be getting around the protagonist, the Ghost, it seems, from what we've been able to see, like a pretty straightforward kind of revenge affair. I've got the protagonist's name here. Jin Sakai is the name of the game's protagonist, and from what we've gathered from the trailer, the Mongol invasion is taking place in Japan. It seems like he's going to be severely injured at some point, and he's going out on a revenge quest and reborn as the Ghost of Tsushima. I don't know, like, not the most original thing in the world, but to me that just sounds like badass storytelling right there. I'm all for it. I mean, let's be honest, there's not much on the planet that's cooler than samurai, right? Alright, so that was all cool confirmation stuff, but in terms of actually crazy news that I woke up on Friday morning and read on Twitter, and I was like, what the hell? That's crazy. The Last of Us is getting adapted into a HBO series. And I'm interested to talk about this one because I feel like, at least from what I've seen online, so many people are super excited about this TV series, and I think that's really cool. I'm glad for those people. Honestly, and I feel like this might be a bit of a hot take, I don't know, I'm not that excited for it, I'm not that into it. And that's not because I think it's going to be bad. I know everyone talks about, oh, video game movies, they suck. I'm not even talking about that whole stereotype. If anything, I'm actually confident the show is going to be really good for a number of reasons. HBO. HBO makes great shit. It's probably going to be really good. And guess who the two main creative heads of this show are going to be? You've got Craig Mazin, who's the creator of the Chernobyl series that so many people loved. I never watched it myself, but I've got no doubt that it's of a very high quality. So, I mean, that's obviously a great get. And my man Neil Druckmann is going to be a co-writer of this series as well, who's of course the lead writer and one of the co-directors of the original Last of Us, the actual game itself. So, I mean, you've got the visionary of the game actually is one of the key executive producers on the series. That sounds like a great combination. I've got no doubt that the show's in great hands, and if Neil is as involved as it seems, then they're not going to botch anything. They're not going to completely ruin the game. They're not going to ruin the story. That ain't going to happen, alright? I assume it's going to be a solid adaptation. And I'm definitely going to watch it, there's no doubt. But I'm not excited for it because, look, it's cool that it's going to be exposed to a brand new mainstream audience. That's awesome. The fact that more people that have never experienced The Last of Us, more people that don't play video games, that have never heard of it, whatever. The fact that this amazing story is going to be opened up to a much wider, more diverse group of people, I think that's great. But selfishly, just talking about myself personally, I just can't get that excited for it because I just don't really want the game to be touched, to be perfectly honest. I don't know, it's just a thing where when you're adapting something that's already a visual method of storytelling, being video games, into another visual method of storytelling, being a TV show, there's just something about it that's just uninteresting to me, to be honest. And everyone online's talking about who's going to play Joel, who's going to play Ellie. I don't give a shit, to be honest. I've got no interest in seeing anyone play Joel and Ellie because to me, Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson are those characters. And of course, the way they're animated, the way they're represented in-game, those combination, all those things, they make those characters within the original game. The thought of some act, whether or not they're famous, they're well known, or just they're unknowns, the thought of any actor in live action representing these characters just doesn't do it for me, honestly. And look, maybe I'll see a trailer when it comes out in a year or whatever, and I'll change my mind immediately. That's very possible. But at this point, just trying to imagine that happen, it doesn't do anything for me. It's a different story when you're trying to adapt something like a book to a movie or to a TV show, because in that case you're adapting a non-visual form of storytelling in a novel to something that is visual, like, you know, like the show or the movie or whatever. And in that case you can cast actors and do all that different stuff, represent what is on text in a visual format through the lens of a camera. That stuff is interesting. But when you're taking something, a story that is already so complete, that is already so engrossing, with already well-performed characters and a fully realised world that already completely exists in a visual form, and then just transferring that into another visual form with new actors, new performances, it's not something I'm going to be excited by. Maybe I'm getting too philosophical and in-depth with the way I look at TV shows and all these kind of things being made. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass. But anyway, that was my weird attempt to justify why I'm not that excited for the TV show. But hey, I think it's probably still going to be good, and I'll definitely watch it, and I hope it surprises me nonetheless. What I would have definitely have rathered, and what I actually thought was the case when I first saw the announcement, I would have loved if they did a HBO show called The Last of Us that was set in that same world and universe, but except follows completely new characters with a completely new story. I thought that would have been awesome, and to be able to continue on those themes that the source material touches on with a new lens, new characters, all that, I think that would have been super interesting, but instead, no. It seems like we're just getting a straight adaptation, so, okay, my interest dropped immediately, but anyway, we'll see how it goes. Alright, I'm glad I got my thoughts out about that one. Next up, let's talk about this leaked Star Wars game, because this was something I also was not expecting. It completely took me by surprise. Now, what happened was this game, Star Wars Project Maverick, the files for this game exist on the PlayStation Store, and they were leaked, I guess, by accidentally being updated or something. I'm not entirely sure how that whole back-end system works. But regardless, something was updated on the PlayStation Store, and it quickly revealed that this Star Wars Project Maverick thing on that store was leaked out, and with it there is an image. It's got a clearly very makeshift logo with a Star Destroyer. So I think it's clear that EA, who would naturally be publishing this game, they don't have anything to show yet because this image is very, very makeshift. It's definitely not a final release thing. And obviously, the game's not going to be called Project Maverick whenever it comes out. So I think that indicates that we are actually a little bit away from a reveal on this one. I don't think, and I wouldn't expect this Project Maverick Star Wars game to be revealed anytime soon, because if you remember a few months ago when Resident Evil 3 leaked in this exact same way via the PlayStation Store, all of the art and the assets and the images for that game were ready to go and finish, and that happened about 2 weeks before it was officially announced. If we're looking at this game where clearly it hasn't even got a final title and the logo isn't complete and all this stuff, you'd probably think we're still a few months away from a reveal at least. But nonetheless, gathering from the image of the Star Destroyer and obviously the title Maverick, definitely all that seems to imply that this is going to be a brand new Star Wars dogfighting game in the vein probably of an X-Wing versus TIE Fighter that we used to see back in the day. Meaning you're probably going to be playing in TIE Fighters and X-Wings or one or the other or something like that, who knows. Either way, Kotaku sources have confirmed that this game is something that they've talked about before, and it's apparently in development at EA Motive, which is the EA studio that was responsible for the Star Wars Battlefront 2 campaign. And I don't believe they've worked on anything since then. That game released in 2017, so it makes a lot of sense they've been spending their time doing something over the last few years, and it would make sense if it's this, they're sticking in the Star Wars realm. And I think it's pretty cool. I don't know if a dogfighting Star Wars game is something that's going to appeal to the masses in the same way a Star Wars Battlefront does, in the same way a Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order did last year. It just doesn't sound as appealing to me, at least. So for that reason, I wouldn't be surprised if this is not a small game necessarily, but a smaller project. EA's had a clear history with releasing all of their Star Wars games in November time, October time at the end of the year, but because that's when next-gen consoles are coming out, I don't see them releasing this Project Maverick game then. I could be totally wrong. I would not be surprised if I'm wrong and it ends up being a PS5, Xbox Series X launch game. That would be pretty cool. I'd definitely like that. But I don't know. I think if this is a smaller, more unusual project like those Kotaku sources are saying, I wouldn't be surprised if this is just a PS4, Xbox One game and it ends up coming out maybe sometime in August or September, a few months before next-gen launch. Either way, I guess it was just the fact that EA's making a new Star Wars game and it's clearly going to be revealed, I guess, somewhat soon. The fact that that was all the case was what surprised me the most. We've all known over the years that EA's been going on a spree of just cancelling more and more Star Wars games, and we only learnt a few weeks ago that they cancelled another Star Wars game that we never even knew about, which would bring their grand total of cancelled Star Wars games to 3, which continues to sadden me every time I say it. So in that sense, obviously we expect a Jedi Fallen Order sequel in the next few years probably, but it was just the fact that we're getting another Star Wars game from EA and it seems to be something different. That's cool, that's exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it in the coming months, I assume, right? Good stuff. And finally, may as well bring it up, right? I'll quickly talk about the PS Plus games. They were announced this week. I don't know, I feel like I've only done like 4 episodes of this one player only show, and like every time, coincidentally, the PS Plus games are revealed that week and I end up talking about them on the show. It's not even that big news, but hey, I guess I've got to keep the tradition going at this point. PS Plus games for March 2020 are Shadow of the Colossus, which is a very interesting game. It is beloved. It's an all-time classic in the industry. I played it around a year ago or so for the first time, and I had an interesting experience with it. I made a whole video about it that no one watched, so please go and watch it. In summary, it's a super interesting, unique experience, and I think if you've got PS Plus, you should absolutely try it out for free, because why the hell not? It's not even that long. And we've got Sonic Forces, which looks like actual garbage. Alright, that's enough from me today. I've talked about all this fun news. I hope you liked the video. I certainly, I certainly made it, that's for sure. Like, comment, subscribe, notification bell, don't report me, all that good stuff. This has been SirCazz. Appreciate your time. Farewell.